And they say history never repeats itself, but it rhymes. This is a story about hunger, about how it gnaws at your insides, ruins lives, and breaks societies. For months, the monsoon didn't bring life-giving rain to the subcontinent. Fields baked under the sun. Rivers ran dry. Crops withered and died. People prayed for rain, but the skies stayed cruel. They walked hundreds of miles, whole families, with children and the elderly. But it was too late. The famine had already killed between 5 and 10 million people. That's between 5 and 10 million. Entire communities had vanished. Families had been torn apart. Survivors struggled to rebuild their lives. They were haunted by the memories of the famine, and India would never be the same again. Many collapsed on the way and died. Those who survived the journey found no food. When they reached the cities, they were told to go back to their villages, but when they returned, they found that their fields had turned into deserts. Some people, especially the rich landowners, tried to save their wealth. They hoarded grain and sold it at high prices. Others did something even worse. They sold their daughters and sons, their own flesh and blood, for a handful of rice. Can you imagine the despair, the hopelessness that must have driven them to such a point? Soon, the British Raj noticed something was wrong. Grain stores were running out. Food prices were shooting up. People were getting desperate. But instead of helping the starving, the British government did something that was almost unbelievable. They let the famine take hold. In 1876, the sky over India turned dark, not with clouds, but with hunger. Today, we remember the forgotten famine to honor the memory of those who died, to remember those who survived, and to learn from the past. We live in a world where climate change, war, and political conflict create artificial famines. So the next time you hear a news report about hunger and starvation, remember the forgotten famine and ask yourself, whose fault is it really? They made laws, collected taxes, and most importantly, controlled the economy. From India, they shipped grains to Europe, especially to Britain. Why? Because they could make more money there. Millions of people went hungry in India while British traders grew richer. And when I say traders, I mean individuals like Andrew Fleming, chairman of the Opium Board in India. He became so rich that he could buy an entire town in London with his profits. Yes, that much money was flowing into Britain from India. At that time, there was a theory called basically, the government kept out of the market. It allowed supply and demand to set prices. Now, this theory worked in England, but India was a colony. The British government wasn't interested in making life better for Indians. They wanted to make money. And in 1876, they were making a lot of it. The Viceroy of India, Lord Lytton, decided to have a grand festival in Delhi. They called it the Delhi. Can you imagine a darbar during a famine? Well, it was a show of power. There were fireworks, feasts, and a lot of them. Lord Lytton, dressed like a Roman emperor, enjoyed the show. But outside the palace, people were starving. The irony was not lost on anyone. Newspapers in Britain called the darbar the famine feast. Some called it a famine farce. But for the British, profits were more important than people. You see, the British East India Company had long been ruling India, but in 1858, the Crown took over. They became the rulers of us. They knew that crops were failing. They knew that people were hungry, but instead of helping the starving, they exported more food. The famine dragged on. People started leaving their villages in search of food. Finally, after 2 years, the rains returned to India. This is a story from history. It's a story that textbooks don't tell you. It's the story of the Great Indian Famine of 1876 to 78. But why should you care about a famine that happened 150 years ago? Because famines are not just natural disasters. They're also man-made. And this famine was both. Yes, the rains failed, but the British government's policies made things worse. They let the famine take as many lives as it wanted. They let it break as many families as it wanted. All for what? To protect their profits. And sadly, even after 150 years, famines continue to haunt our world.